Thank you.
All right, going on mute.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to start, Zach?
Almost. Give me
Okay.
just a few seconds and this should be working. All right. Okay, and we should be set now. I think we have everyone, right? Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Apologize for the technical delays, but in the world of COVID and Zoom, I guess it's to be expected. This is a meeting of the Albany City Planning Board. And I want to go over the rules of procedure before we begin. And before that, I will introduce the folks who are on your screen. We have Amy Levine, who is our Corporation Counsel, Vanessa Gayard, Planning Board Member, Martin Hull, Planning Board Member, Chris Ellis, Planning Board Member, and Roman Kuchera, who's calling in by telephone, also Planning Board Member, and myself, I'm Al DeSalvo, Planning Board Chair. Also with us is Zach Powell of the Planning Department staff. Zach will be coordinating the meeting. Our rules of procedure is that we begin by having the applicants for each proposal make a presentation, and we give them 10 minutes to make the presentation. After that, the planning board members would have questions directed at the applicants. And after that, we open up the floor for members of the audience to make comments. You have 3 minutes to make your comments, unless you are a common council member, because they represent a wider group of geographically of people. They have 6 minutes to make their comments. After that, staff will present its findings and recommendations. And then after that, the applicants will have 6 minutes to clarify anything, or if there are any issues that were raised, they can address them. I urge members of the audience, when you make your comments, if you have heard similar comments from other people on the topic that we're addressing, that's what you were going to say, I would recommend that you just simply say that you agree with the previous speaker or the speaker before. If you have any new thoughts or ideas, you would have time to mention them. I will now ask Zach to inform you how to sign up and how he will be running the timing of your comments.
Great, thanks, Al. So if you would like to speak on any of the items tonight, you can feel free to send a chat using the chat feature within Zoom with your name and your address and the case or application that you'd like to speak on. If you're joining by phone, when we get to the public comment portion, you can press *9 on your phone to raise your hand, and I will keep a lookout for you and then call on you. And then we can get your name and address for the public record, since that's required by the city code. When it is your time to speak, I will put a visual and audible timer on the screen. And as Al mentioned, you'll have 3 minutes if you're a member of the public and 6 minutes if you're a common council member. When it gets to 30 seconds remaining, there will be an audible beep and a change in color on the screen. And when your time is expired, there will be 3 beeps and another change in color. And if you have any other questions or issues in signing up to speak, feel free to send a chat during the meeting.
Okay, we will begin. To the planning board, we have 3 items on our agenda that are the initial ones. And all 3 of them may lend themselves for consent agenda, but I'll announce one each individually and ask Zach if there are anybody who wants to make comments on them, if the planning board itself has questions. The first one is DPR 0101 35 Commerce Avenue. This is a major development plan review in a light industrial area for the construction of a warehouse addition. The second item, and this one, of course, we've reviewed a couple of times, and both in a workshop session and a planning board meeting. The other 2 are demolition of garages. One is DPR 0110 at 97 Reichman Avenue. And the other one is DPR 0109, demolition of a garage on Bradford Street. Zach, is there anyone who would like to speak on 35 Commerce Avenue?
No one has signed up previously. Someone just sent, nope, no one on the list.
Okay. Planning board members, would you be willing to put this on the consent agenda?
Yes.
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 Okay. All righty.
Yes.
Okay, then I would call for a vote to put this on the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes unanimously. And the recommended action on this one is 2. The first is for a negative declaration on the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And the second is a recommended action to approve the plan. I think we can take these together, can we not? So,
Yeah, you would just make a motion to act on them
Okay.
together as a joint action.
okay, so, thank you. So may I have a motion to approve this secret negative declaration and approve for the development plan?
So
Do
moved.
we have a move
Second.
by Martin Hall, seconded?
Second.
Second by Christopher Ellis. Further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, passes unanimously. Second item is demolition of 514 Bradford Street, a garage. And the recommended action here is a negative declaration of the State Environmental Quality Review Act and approval of the demolition. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by
Sorry.
Roman Kuchera, seconded by Glenessa Gaillard. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. And the final item on the consent agenda is 97 Reichman Avenue. Again, the proposed demolition of a garage, and the recommended action is a negative declaration on the State Environmental Quality Review Act and a proposal to approve the demolition. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Roman
Seconded.
Kuchera, seconded by Martin Hull.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. So those three items have been dispensed with, and we can move on to the other issues. Next item on the agenda is 425 North Pearl Street, also known as 413, and the applicant is 413 North Pearl Associates, and this is the major development plan review for the conversion of a 78,000 square foot existing warehouse into 82 dwelling units. We have seen this in a couple of workshop sessions and also at our November 24th public meeting. Zach.
So Joe and Damien, I just added you as panelists, so you should be able to unmute and turn on video if you'd like. For presentations, we provide 10 minutes, so I'll be timing that, and I'll just let you know when that time expires. Traditionally, what we do is if you go over time and the planning board would like to allow you to continue to speak, they will make a motion on that. And so let me know when you are ready, and I can progress the slides when you say next slide.
All right, thank you very much, Zach, and board members. As Zach mentioned, my name is Damian Pinto Martin with Redburn Development, applying on behalf of a Redburn Development owned entity, 413 North Pearl Associates LLC. We are proposing a historic renovation of the property located at tax parcel 425 North Pearl Street, mailing address 413 North Pearl Street, which is a bit of the confusion, but it is the same property. Zach, if you'd like to progress the slide. Here is the location of the property, kind of buttressed between North Pearl and Broadway, directly across the street from Nine Pin Cider Works, and down the street from the a lot of the nightlife of the warehouse district on Broadway there as well. This is a mixed-use form-based warehouse district, and our application, obviously takes that into mind, as with all of our planning requirements for that as well. If you'd like to progress. So we have parking requirements of 1 space per unit for the USDO and 1 space per 400 square feet of the commercial space. We are proposing about, I think, 12,000 square feet of commercial, Joe?
Yep, just about, a little bit more.
So we do not have a use or a tenant at this time, but we are pursuing them. But we definitely want to keep a big section of it being that commercial use, which is where we've kind of factored that in. So the initial requirements, 116 spaces. Obviously, with the transit reduction, it drops it a little bit. Some shared parking reduction, and then the available on streets. Our total on-site required spaces is 54, which we have on-site broken up kind of into 3 distinct lots. One that is accessed off of Broadway and 2 that are accessed off of North Pearl. This building does take up just about a whole city block, so it does have a couple of sort of main entrances, as it were, and you'll be able to park closest to your main entrance for your particular unit. Next slide. Site plan, we've gone back and we've taken a lot of the feedback that's been provided by all the members of the planning department and the engineering reviews and parking and traffic and parking as well. So it's kind of cut off a little bit, but we're going to be providing a crosswalk up on the intersection of North Pearl Street and Pleasant, which is highlighted a bit there with the additional signs as they're shown. And we've also, and I think we'll get to it when we get to green spaces, but we've got a few different green space requirements for along of our streets, as well as some islands that we've included in the parking areas. So if you want to go to the parking area. So these are the 3 parking areas I mentioned, the one off of Broadway and the 2 off of North Pearl, with a few different islands and green space in between them there. If you would like to go on. So these are the existing parking lots as they are, very likely going to be resurfaced. And then at least in this front left photo, that sort of paved area will get turned into living greenery. So we are converting the residential spaces as seen here in some of the buildings with the I would say probably, so it's 78,000, we're doing about 12 to 13,000 warehouse. So bulk of it is still residential. There's 82 units that are contained in here. The existing buildings are 4 stories for that top section. And then there's some basement and first floor units along the front warehouse of Broadway, which is that strip just behind the green space. Here are some pictures of the existing buildings. This is a historic renovation. So it has two kind of different types of architecture and structure. The one on the right is a typical brick joisted masonry. The image on the left is your steel and concrete mushroom columned warehouse, both of which have historic value for the 2 different types predominantly found here in the Albany area. And renovations will include new windows for basically all of that warehouse section, or complete repair to bring all of those back to new life. The majority of the windows in the joisted masonry section are actually in good shape, and we plan to kind of just repair those as needed. Commercial space is highlighted here. This is part of a single-story warehouse with a bit of a basement underneath it. The basement does not encompass the entire space. As you'll see in some of our layouts, we do have some amenities that's proposed in the basement area, but this has its own loading dock built in. So, we're at the moment, we're anticipating a warehouse or, a slightly more interesting use type of tenant that would be able to, move in and utilize the warehouse, and we'll be vanilla boxing that space for them to current code. It's a picture of the loading dock and kind of the single story with a partial basement section on the left. The joisted masonry brick is the right, and this structure on the left, the warehouse, becomes a metal K-truss, more 1950s style add-on, which still does have some historic value for those that might be familiar with the previous applicant for this site. All of the buildings tell a story about the progression and the value of the warehouse district. So the green spaces you see are highlighted. We do have met all of the requirements for the number of trees. I will state that there is still a bit of confusion about where we're going to put the trees, and I'm looking to either Zach or the board to kind of formalize that. In my mind, we were going to be doing the tree boxes with grates spaced evenly around our entire front facade. I think our engineer had kind of placed them onto some of the existing green spaces, which we were already proposing. So I'll certainly be interested in the planning board's and Zach's feedback on exactly how to place them. We're open to either option. I think we've got the number correct, and we just, get some direction on where exactly to put them. So on the left photo, you'll see there's a strip of asphalt that's directly up against the building. And then there's a sidewalk and another strip of asphalt. That asphalt strip right up against the building is one of the ones we're proposing to turn all the way back into green space. And then I'm thinking that we'll probably be kind of fixing up those tree boxes that are a bit overgrown and recreating the similar tree facade and frontage. The building has a lot of different egresses, kind of all of which assist us with getting to our two means of egress for all of our apartments that we're putting in there, the 82 units. Again, the majority of our units, as you'll see when we get on, is our typical 1s and 2s. We're interested in young professionals, market rate, and or retirees seem to be our target markets, and we don't anticipate that being any different here. In fact, maybe a few more young professionals given the proximity to some of the nightlife. So as you can see here, there are a number of exits and entrances. So we'll go on a bit, and I'm excited that we were able to get this. This should help you understand where the layout is. The bottom left is kind of the key, where there's a bit of an orange highlight for which section you're looking at. It is hard to get the entire plan onto one slide or even one 24x36 drawing. So this section is the warehouse. On the bottom kind of plan south and plan west is warehouse. And then right across, and that's the concrete warehouse, right across the stairwell to plan north is the partial basement of the metal designed warehouse. And that's the extent of the basement as you actually proceed plan north, but south into Albany. In the image on the bottom left, south is up on the image. So I apologize for that. But
And
we have
just let the board know that's 10 minutes. Would they like to extend the time? Or would you all like to extend the time?
What's the board's feeling about it?
That's fine.
I'm fine with that.
Do I have
I'm
a
okay with it.
consensus? Okay. Since we've already seen this once, can you move along fairly quickly?
Yes, absolutely. So, all the apartments have exterior windows, including the basement units. If you'd like to extend on. Similar layouts, this hopefully helps you just position yourself a bit more. These are our typical 650 to 900 square foot units, 1 to 2 beds, as I mentioned. If you have any specific questions, you can feel free to ask me. But these stack kind of from here on out, if you'd like to continue. That green is the commercial space. So you can see it's access to the dock. And it actually has a receiving on Broadway as well. These units stack. And then we'll let, I think Zach will probably provide some of the staff comments. I believe that we've worked the rest of them in. If that is not the case, Zach, let me know.
Okay. Questions to the applicant from the planning board? I don't hear any. So, Zach, do you want to do staff comments first or hear from the public if there are any public comments?
There are no public speakers. I think there's a few things just to clarify real quickly. We've been working with the applicant to address staff comments and our department comments relatively quickly over the past couple of days. So going back, excuse me, going back to the site plan, Damien, you're proposing to remove the chain link fencing. And as we had discussed, you can retain the chain link fencing, but once you remove it, you would have to install new screening for the parking lot that meets the USDO standards. There wasn't a note on the new site plan of proposed new screening. So are you looking to remove the chain link fencing or retain it?
We're currently looking to remove the barbed wire and retain the chain link with
Gotcha.
the less barbed wire aggressive design of it.
So just removing the barbed wire from the existing fencing, or removing the, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you
just
for the
removing the barbed
clarification.
wire, and then we're gonna straighten up the existing fencing. We'll come back to the board if that turns out to change, but there are some, since a large section of it's kind of sitting on a retaining wall, it created some other interesting situations for some of the coverages. If we can dress it up, we certainly will, but we're absolutely going to remove the barbed wire.
So just something to keep in mind, chain link fencing isn't permitted in front yards unless it's a pre-existing chain link fence. So once you remove a chain link fence, it's not permitted to be reinstalled. You can do repair work to it though. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then going forward into the presentation, it had appeared that you were looking to request a waiver for the 5 street trees, since there were 5 existing city street trees that didn't qualify for the tree credits. So I have included the review for that waiver request as part of this presentation. I can go through that with the board, and then if there's discussion questions or issues with that, I think we can proceed forward if an alternate landscaping plan is desired by the planning board.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine with us. I mean, we're looking to get that number completely hammered out here. So,
Zach, what is the recommendation of the staff regarding the street trees? I understand there was an issue of how big they are for some of them versus others that already exist.
Yeah, let me go to the site plan. It's a little bit confusing, and I was personally surprised by this. So the applicant's proposing 14 street trees, which on the site plan are noted in green right here. However, there are an existing set of 5 street trees that are a little bit closer to Broadway. However, when the applicant measured the caliper of the trees, they were small enough where the caliper size did not enable them to receive a tree credit or reduce the total number of trees that they would be required to install. This gets a little convoluted or kind of confusing because when an applicant is proposed to install new street trees, it has to be of a caliper of at least 2 inches, and the existing street trees exceed that already. So it seemed counterintuitive to ask the applicant to remove existing city street trees in order to install street trees that could be of the exact same size in terms of caliper.
How many trees are required altogether?
So it's 1 per 35 linear feet of street frontage. And based on the frontage for this property, since it has 3, that results in 19 required street trees. They're providing 14, and there's an existing 5. However, technically, under the code, those 5 don't count towards that total 19. So
because of the caliper size?
Yes, even though what would be installed to meet that requirement is could be even smaller than what's already there. So it didn't really make sense
Right.
to, remove existing trees that are supporting the streetscape already.
Seems to me that the ones that are along Broadway, I believe that the lower part there is Broadway, right? That's Broadway?
Yep.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, the trees that are existing, even though they're smaller caliper, it makes 2 rows of trees, which I think kind of softens that whole edge, especially with the 1950s style add-on there where the commercial space is. And since Broadway, has a lot of heavy traffic with trucks, especially there seems to me that having that kind of double row of trees with a sidewalk in the middle does soften that pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree. So for this application, there are 2 waivers being proposed, one for pedestrian scaled lighting and for the trees. Are there any other questions from the board before I go into the review of those requests?
Okay, hearing none.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so I included both requests on each slide. So I'll try to go through these quickly since there is a lot of text. The first waiver standard talks about whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to neighboring properties. For the pedestrian scaled lighting, the existing property and streetscape already has a combination of city street lights, and there's wall mounted lights on the subject property. So by granting this waiver, there's no change as a result to the character of the neighborhood. And there's not a detrimental impact for neighboring properties since there's existing lighting and there's not negative impacts as a result to an absence of any lighting as a result. For the street tree waiver, it's not creating an undesirable change because the 5 existing trees under this waiver would remain and new trees would be installed anyway as a result. So it's retaining those and adding to those visual and shade benefits to the neighborhood. Any other questions before I move on to the next review criterion? Okay. The second, this is a little bit longer. Thanks, Al. So the second one, this is split into 2 just because it's a little bit longer. This talks about whether the benefit sought could be achieved by another method. For the lighting waiver, this is the second project that we've seen where there's been a request for the lighting. However, the city hasn't developed standards for what is appropriate pedestrian scale lighting. So this would delay the project. And given that this would add time, it'd be somewhat of a capricious request when there's already existing lighting, especially since there's been a replacement of LED streetlights, and the applicant is proposing to install street trees and other amenities that are at the pedestrian level. So it's providing a pedestrian scale benefit as part of the project. And there are existing wall mounted lights that are 15 feet or below, or 15 feet or less from grade, and they're being retained. So they'll provide a similar ambient lighting along with the lighting from the proposed residential units. So given all these factors, this is the only way that the benefit sought can be achieved. And moving on to,
Oh, sorry.
nope.
The light fixtures that are already attached to the building, are they on the street side or parking or both?
On both.
Okay.
So moving on to the street tree waiver request, the applicant could have removed the existing street trees and planted new ones with the same caliper as the existing ones, but this is, again, arbitrary and capricious by wasting existing landscaping that essentially meets the intent of the USGO requirement. Any questions before I move on? Okay. The third review standard for waivers is whether it's a substantial waiver. For the lighting, it's not a substantial request since the city hasn't developed pedestrian scaled lighting standards for the applicant to comply with. And there are existing wall mounting lighting that aligns with the maximum permitted height. So given that they are providing some form of lighting, the requested waiver is not substantial. For the street tree waiver request, there will be a total of 19 street trees fronting the property. So given that there will be a total of 19 and functionally they will all meet the required size and caliper, the requested waiver is not substantial.
On the pedestrian scaled lighting standards, the USDO includes a page or so on pedestrian scale lighting with some level of detail. Is the thinking at the city that that's not enough to move forward with?
Yeah, I mean, there is stuff related to height, you know, and as you're speaking to, there are some areas like within a site where there are benefits that the lighting are supposed to achieve, you know, with corners and, you know, internal portions of the site. However, with the update to the LED lighting that the city has done, there have been a lot of changes in what we want for streetlights going forward, and we just have not had the time to develop those standards. And we want to make sure that if something is proposed, that it meets our standards so that it doesn't have to get ripped up or stick out when we do create those new standards. So this is something that our department is beginning to work on, but this is going to take a little while, and it's going to involve, you know, multiple departments, including, you know, our engineering department and our engineering division and Department of General Services, as well as Commissioner Spencer, who's been doing a lot of the work with the LED conversion. So at this point, it's just there are a lot of factors and issues that need to be sorted out before we officially release standards.
Okay, thank you.
And Damien, I'm just going to go through these real quickly and then I'll get back to you in just one sec. For the fourth review criterion, this is whether the proposed waiver will have an adverse effect or impact on the conditions in the neighborhood or district. For the lighting, it won't have an adverse impact because there is existing lighting and there are no changes proposed as part of the waiver. And the existing lighting prevents any negative impacts as a result of an absence of lighting. And for the street tree waiver request, retaining the existing 5 street trees will have a positive effect on maintaining the existing physical and environmental conditions of the neighborhood as well. You know, and replacing that could have negative impacts. And moving on to the last review criterion and whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. You know, both of these are self-created. I think there are some extenuating circumstances. You know, this is kind of a unique situation with the street trees, that there are an existing set of 5 trees that technically don't meet the tree credit criteria. And while applicants are required to provide pedestrian scale lighting for properties in certain mixed use districts over an acre, the city hasn't created those standards, and asking applicants to install and wait for us to develop new standards could unnecessarily extend the review period for a project. And we also wouldn't want applicants to install lighting that, a few months down the line do not align with what the city is proposing for new pedestrian scaled lighting going forward. Any questions from board members before I go back to Damien?
Okay, no questions. So we have another comment by the applicant.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the lighting waiver request that I believe that what we're proposing does kind of meet the intent for proper safety and lighting of an area. We just there's some confusion on some of the specific types of fixtures or how and when and kind of what they're looking for. But I do believe that we're accomplishing the intent of how the property will be lit. Was all I wanted to add.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and I'd like to agree. I think I'll vote affirmatively, but but that is because the intent clearly does meet what the existing section in the USDO, again, implies. So I think that the consistency is important.
Zach, I just wanted to check again. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak?
No speakers have signed up.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to the recommended actions. We have three recommended actions. The third one with conditions. If you're following along with me with the documentation you got before the meeting, I will read them. The first recommended action is a waiver for pedestrian scale lighting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, moved by Martin Hull, seconded by Christopher Ellis. Any comments, questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Hey.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Al, for the
Yes,
record, the second was Roman Kachira.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. Just
Chris,
wanted
it's
to
hard
be
to tell the
correct on
difference.
record.
Chris, it's hard to tell the difference between the two of us.
Absolutely.
Well, Roman's got a beard, that I should know. The second recommended action is a waiver for not planting 5 of the required 19 street trees, because we already know that there are 5 already there. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Glenessa Gayard and seconded this time by Christopher Ellis. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And the last item is recommended action to approve the project with the following 2 conditions. The first one is that the applicant must receive approval from the Division of Traffic Engineering for the site plan submitted on February 22nd. And you saw the inset on the plan concerning that. And condition number 2 is the applicant must receive approval from the Department of Water and Water Supply for the February 22nd Water and Sewer Engineering Report and Site Plan.
Just to provide some quick context, the applicant has addressed all of the items in that letter. We just have not had time to send it back to the departments just to confirm that the applicants met those requirements. So this is just kind of ensuring that if there's anything that we miss, it's caught, but the applicant has addressed all of those items.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the project with those two conditions?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Roman, seconded by Glenyce Gillard. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yes, you too.
We'll move on now to the next item on the agenda. And this is CUP 0039. The project is 1385 Washington Avenue. The applicant is Jackie He from DMG Investments, represented by Dan Hirschberg of Hirschberg and Hirschberg. And the proposal in an MUCU, that is mixed use community urban district, is the construction of a 5-story dormitory with 184 units and a parking garage with surface parking lot totaling about 98 spaces. This is the first official appearance, although we have seen this on, I think, in 2 workshop meetings. And this is a concept plan review, so there's no action on it tonight except to understand the proposal.
So Al, I
Okay.
think the order might have gotten mixed up. I thought 22 Holland was next. Feel free to correct me on that.
Well, I don't know. I had this one as the second one, but we can change if we want. Okay, we'll go to 22 Holland Avenue. And then we'll go to 1385. This is CUP 0038 and DPR 0115. The reason for the 2 numbers is that this is both a major development plan review as well as conditional use review. The property address is 22 Holland Avenue. The applicant is Ed Baksh, and the representative is Dan Hirschberg of Hirschberg and Hirschberg. And this too is in an MUCU, mixed use community urban district. And this is a concept review of a major development plan for the construction of a 2,472 square foot restaurant and drive-through. Before we begin, I just wanted to, as we're listening to this, and again, this is a concept plan review. We will be seeing this probably in future meetings, but I did want to mention to the board, but also to the community members who are listening in and probably going to speak on this, that the planning board is guided by 7 items for review criteria for the development plan review. And you might want to look that up and take a close look at it, because these are the restrictions and basically that we have to look at and that we have to be guided by. And for those of you who can find this online, it's on page 244, and it is section 375-5E14. And additionally, for conditional use, we are guided by 6 criteria, and that is found on page 247 of the Unified Sustainable Development Ordinance. And that is 375-5E17C. Those specifically are the criteria that we must follow when we're deciding any project that has proposals that include conditional use and or major development plan review. And once again, I'll mention that this is probably the first of a couple of meetings that we will see this project, and this is only a concept review, so we will not be making any decisions tonight. Okay, we'll start with the proposal by the applicant.
Dan, I think you should be able to unmute and turn on your video whenever you're ready. Let me know if there's anyone else that needs to be elevated to a panelist.
Here I am. I'm Dan Hirschberg with the firm of Hirschberg and Hirschberg. We're here today representing the Brick Network, which is the applicant to build a Popeyes restaurant at 22 Holland Avenue. Next, this is the aerial photo of the site. You can see the hotel on the lower center of the site. Behind that is the parking lot, which stretches out quite a distance from Holland Avenue, goes back like 400 feet before it enters a driveway from Hackett Boulevard. And the existing site is right at the Holland Avenue end of that long parking lot. Next. This is the existing condition. So what it shows is that the existing site has the hotel on it and the parking area. It also is traversed by a very large sewer, an 84-inch diameter concrete sewer, which is the Hackett Boulevard sub-truck sewer of the Patroon Creek sewer system, of the Beaver Creek sewer system, which many people who know the area is subjected to failing at times of high rain. And the site statistics there show that the existing site is 27.5% green area. Next. This shows the overall site, again, includes the hotel and the leased area for the Popeyes restaurant. Because it's all one site and we're not doing a subdivision to create a separate site, it all has to be considered together. So things like street trees and street furniture and issues like that all had to be treated together. And so we do have the combined area in there where we talk about the green space on the leased area is 30.3%, and on a total area is 22.2%. Next, this is a blow up of the leased area, and the dark line around it shows you the leased area there, and it's on the lower side of that is a retaining wall, and the building is located up against the street line as requested under USDO, and the drive-through is in the rear as proposed by USDO. That all drive-throughs should be in the rear, and the parking lot is also in the rear. So the main pedestrian access will be off Holland Avenue. The main entrance is shown there. Secondary access would be off the parking lot. People that drive will come in the rear of the building where that crosswalk is. So the crosswalk will go across the drive-through lane. The drive-through cars will be coming from a stop there, and there'll be a yield for pedestrian sign there so that they remember to yield when they're leaving with their food. And we do show a dumpster on the Hackett Boulevard side. And in order to get to it, they'll cross in that hatched area in the parking lot. And because the dumpster pickup will take place before the restaurant opens, the restaurant hours start at 10:30 in the morning and go to 11 p.m. at night. So that there's hours in the morning where the dumpster could be handled then, and all deliveries to be taken at this restaurant then. Next. The overall landscape plan shows that we do need 17 pieces of street furniture. What we've done here, although we may change it later as you get to the end slide on this, I make some other suggestions, but we do show tree boxes, which are our planter boxes, which will be located around the site, both in front of the hotel and down the strip to in front of the Popeyes. Landscaping will be placed all along the site. There's a significant amount of existing landscaping on the parking lot on the Hackett Boulevard side. That'll be retained. We're adding landscaping along Hackett Boulevard, and we're adding some landscaping along in front of the hotel. There had been street trees there before, which were taken down. I don't know whether it was a problem that they were just immediately over the sewer out in the street, or whether or not they just didn't survive very well. Next. And this is the landscape plan for the leased area. We show a significant amount of shrubbery around the dumpster area, some shrubbery separating the parking spaces. We show some landscaping, trees, and then the rest are planting boxes in front. And we have a bike rack at that location there at the corner. And again, this is a landscaping plan which we think does benefit that corner. Next. These are the elevation views of the building. This is the one from the drive-through side is at the top, and from the Holland Avenue side is at the bottom. Those are standard Popeye details, so they do have variants that can be made, and we'll talk about doing some later. Next. And this is the elevation view from Holland Avenue heading north. When you're coming from Delaware Avenue, heading north on Holland Avenue towards Scotland, that's the Popeyes that you'll see at that end. And the other elevation view is from Hackett Boulevard. Next. This is a typical Popeye view. It's not drawn specifically for this, although it looks a lot like it, but the circulation pattern's different. This is an area where the drive-through goes around in front of the building. But that's the treatment that the building will have. That's typical of the signage and the color scheme. Next. And this is another view that shows how the drive-through works, and it has the entrance at the back beyond the drive-through. And that's typical of the Popeyes typical layout. And last, we attended a workshop meeting, or we listened to a workshop meeting, and we attended the neighborhood meeting, and some issues were raised. So I just want to talk over what we intend to do to address those. First of all traffic will enter and exit the site through the existing driveway in Hackett Boulevard, about 390 feet west of the intersection with Holland Avenue. The connecting driveway with the hotel will remain one way from the hotel towards Hackett Boulevard. No traffic from this use will either enter directly onto Holland Avenue. We will do a traffic study. We're retaining a local traffic engineer to perform a traffic study. We will be studying the intersection of Hackett and Holland, Hackett and our driveway, Holland and the two driveways from the hotel, and Holland and Delaware Avenue, which will be intersections that might be most directly impacted, and are intersections that already do suffer from some lower level services. The view from Hackett Boulevard. Seeing what we heard at the workshop session, we believe we're going to flip the building so that the side towards Hackett Boulevard will be the side that you saw coming down from Holland Avenue, and the side with the dumpster on it and the other facilities will now be facing the hotel. We think that'll be more visually pleasing and will allow us to have more compliance with the transparency requirements of the USDO. Pedestrian access to the site. Pedestrian access will be through the two entrances I mentioned, one from Holland Avenue and one from the parking lot. And the applicant will be constructing a 390 linear feet of sidewalks along Hackett Boulevard from Holland Avenue all the way to the end of the project site. And the question was raised, providing pedestrian connection from that sidewalk to the rear entrance of Popeyes, and we'll certainly consider that, and our new proposal will have it. The restaurant will be open from 10:30 to 11 p.m. Sound from the ordering system will be set so as not to disturb any adjoining residences. Trash concerns were raised. Obviously, the applicant will be willing to have trash receptacles on the site and will propose to have applicants daily remove accumulated trash from the area adjoining their lease site. And the building elevations, neighbors expressed they didn't like the appearance of Popeyes. However, that's the appearance that Popeyes likes. So again, we don't intend to make much changes with regard to the appearance of the building. I'm prepared to answer any questions Mr. Board might have.
I'll open it up to questions by the board.
How long will the land lease be before?
Oh, I have to. Could you turn on Ed Box sound? I don't know whether he's on.
Oh, you didn't hear me?
Ed?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. What's the length of the lease?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I get it.
I'm just promoting Ed right now, so he should be rejoining in a sec as a panelist. So Ed, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your video if you'd like to.
Hi, Ed. They want to know the length of the lease. I don't happen to know that.
It's a 20-year lease,
Okay.
and then of course options to renew.
Right, options to renew it. Typically, probably, obviously, if it's a success, you'll continue to go from there.
And what happens if it's not a success?
Yeah.
What happens to the building? I ask that because farther up the street on Delaware Avenue, there has been a vacant Friendly's for many years.
Well, I'm not sure whether or not the lease requirements is anything about if in fact it gets abandoned, but for the term of the lease, I think Brick Network would be responsible to maintain it.
You went out on me a little bit. You said somebody would be responsible for maintaining it. Can you say that one more time? Because you sort of went in and out.
It's called, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Ed, the Brick Network is the franchisee, and they were required to maintain that building for the duration of the lease. If it doesn't become use, I guess they would look for an alternate use. And being that to be paying taxes on an empty building, I don't know whether or not they would consider demolishing it.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, they do anticipate to be successful enough for the full 20-year lease, but I'll leave that to them to defend.
Dan, how many linear feet is the?
Oh, yeah, muted, Roman.
Roman, you muted yourself. Start again.
All right. Gotta move my hand. Dan, how many linear feet is the access drive on Hackett from the intersection of Hackett?
390 feet. It's all the way down at the far end of the site. So it's 390 feet, which gives you a lot of space in there for queuing at that intersection. But we asked the traffic study to also study queuing, be certain what hours queuing might be a problem. The queue builds up in that direction primarily at the AM peak hour when people are going downtown, coming down Hackett Boulevard to Holland Avenue and turning right. So that the queue is longest at that time, and at that time, Popeyes won't be open. So again, that's an advantage. In the afternoon PM peak hour, the queue is not that long in that direction, although there are still a lot of employees leaving that may come out onto Hackett Boulevard and then head to Holland. But the traffic study is going to study that and review the queue. We're all aware now the traffic study is under a little bit of problem now because of the pandemic. So the traffic study is going to use a formula that's been set up by a lot of traffic engineers at New York State DOT to review projects during the pandemic. They apply a factor to it to correct it for peak hour volumes during non-pandemic times. And who knows whether or not they'll ever get back to that, but that's all has to be taken into consideration because you do it. They are going to be doing traffic study now with traffic counts, but we all know that they're down now due to people working remotely, and some people, they're not even going to work. So that's one aspect of the traffic.
Other questions by the board?
I had a quick question on the site plan. I was curious as to how far set back the building is from Hackett. It was kind of hard to tell where the curb was.
Yeah.
Is the curb actually off the?
Now the green, the edge of the green line is actually the property line. So
Okay.
it's quite a distance out to Hackett Boulevard. People don't realize the Hackett Boulevard right away was set up in 1944 when I was a kid. I used to go back there and they destroyed my woods to put Hackett Boulevard in, but it's probably in late 1940s. And it was always planned to be another 2 lanes, and that's why the right of way is so wide at that location. But the second 2 lanes were never added.
Okay, and so that's what that space is.
Yeah.
And it looks like the sidewalk is shown there. Is that right?
Yeah, the sidewalk we proposed to put down by the edge of the pavement, although we could move it into the site. That's yet to be determined, but that sidewalk is going to start at Hackett and Holland and go all the way down to the end of our project site.
Okay, that's important. Thank you.
Any other questions by the board? I guess, Dan, I would ask again, it seems to me that there's a lot of parking that I question.
Yeah,
Why
my
there
guess
has
is
to
that
be
we can
so much
talk.
parking.
Yeah. Again, the parking was based upon the number of seats, and we used the code to figure out how much parking we should have. The applicants will certainly be willing to bank some of the parking or leave it out entirely. They don't believe that they'll need that much parking. They're highly dependent upon drive-through and pedestrian. This is a great location for the pedestrian lunch hour traffic. A lot of people work in the area. So my guess is we could work with the applicant to reduce the number of parking spaces below the spaces we show.
Yeah, I would certainly support that as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And just to quickly add, Dan, I think it exceeds the maximum permitted amount by 1 parking space as well. So,
yeah.
I mean, at least 1 space, but don't want to speak on top of the planning board, but just kind of as a add-on to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we may request a waiver to reduce below that amount because the benefit of having more green space is obvious to everyone.
Other questions? Okay, with that, we'll open it up to members of the audience. And once again, to members of the audience, I would strongly urge that if someone speaks and you agree with that person and they bring up the same points, I would suggest that you just indicate you agree. And the points that have been raised would definitely be underlined. This would allow us to move through this initial stage. And I will again mention that you will have at least another couple of opportunities to see this project, as I'm sure we will see it more than once at future meetings. Zach?
Thanks, Al. So we have 7 speakers. All right, and so the first speaker is Councilmember Fahey. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
Feel
Zach.
free to start. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to the chair and members of the planning board and staff. I'm Councilmember Kathy Fahey, Councilmember for the 7th Ward, and this property is in the 7th Ward. Right up front in our USDO, purpose of the USDO is explained. In addition to implementing policies of the comprehensive plan, the purpose is to promote economic reinvestment in the city, and protect and preserve the city's residential neighborhoods. Also promote, preserve, and encourage the aesthetic quality and reinforce the historic urban form and fabric of the city, and promote the public's health, safety, and general welfare, and promote environmentally sensitive development. And this Popeyes project proposal goes against these precepts. First, it will detract from the economic vitality of adjacent neighborhoods and commercial districts. Delaware Avenue, around the corner from this property, has a master plan, and it emphasizes support for small, independently owned mom and pop businesses that line their street. They characterize their avenue as Albany's Main Street, an attractive, walkable neighborhood, mixed-use neighborhood. Placing a car-centric fast food restaurant around the corner detracts from this neighborhood vision. It encourages more automobile use with its drive-through and large number of parking spaces. And how does it promote, preserve, and encourage the aesthetic quality and historic form and fabric of our city? Holland Avenue is notable for its civic institutions such as the Veterans Hospital, Albany Law School, and State Agency Building. Yes, it has McDonald's and Walgreens, but ask anyone and they'll say they are out of place. The addition of a Popeyes corporate cookie cutter building detracts from the look of Holland Avenue. Do we really want more fast food places and big box pharmacies there? Residents would say no. I'm concerned about traffic safety for pedestrians at this intersection. It's a wide and busy intersection, and crossing the street is not easy. The Popeyes will encourage foot traffic, but it won't be safe because of increased automobile traffic in and out of Popeyes and McDonald's. I can picture youth from the Girls Leadership Academy Charter School heading to Popeyes after school, and youth from Hackett Middle School placed at risk as they try to cross busy Holland Avenue unnecessarily. The Popeyes will serve fast food that is not healthy, not that healthy. It'll use disposable dinnerware and containers that go against good environmental practice. We've seen the impacts of fast food places such as the KFC on Delaware, with litter trailing down the street and unshoveled sidewalks. I understand there will be a public hearing on the conditional use drive-through if this application moves forward. And there's plenty to say about that, such as pedestrians needing to cross the drive-through lane in order to enter the building, which is not safe. And the way the stacking aisle is designed so that it runs adjacent to the sidewalk, emitting fumes for passersby. But if we can put the brakes on this proposal now, that would be for the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Bear with me one sec. I'm just going to switch to a different timer. Thanks everyone for your patience. Ms. McNeely, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Oh, thanks so much. Hi, I'm Louise. I live at 27 Summit at Federal. I also own commercial property at 540 Delaware Avenue. As many of you know, for close to 30 years, I've been planning, organizing, and doing outreach in this neighborhood. So from those meetings, discussions, surveys, and plans, like our council member Fahey, I can assure the board that this is not the type of development that we're anxious to encourage, and it isn't a project that makes sense for our neighborhood. At the last Dana meeting, as Mr. Hirschberg said, and in follow-up, we've heard many concerns about this project. When we do surveys and we ask residents what they most appreciate about our neighborhood, it's always walkability, locally owned neighborhood-based businesses. This project does not fit with the 2030 comprehensive plan that I worked so very hard on. We were the very first neighborhood to develop a neighborhood-specific plan initially on our own. That was probably 24 years ago. And then with city help, as Kathy mentioned, we got a more extensive plan, which led to us getting Obama stimulus funding for the commercial neighborhood district revitalization. Absentee-owned drive-through chains were not part of that planning. We do have 2 multinational fast food drive-throughs like this in the neighborhood. As Kathy mentioned, they're not assets. They're not good neighbors. Every single day, I pick up litter and everyone else does from McDonald's. When we do neighborhood cleanups, it's just bags and bags of litter. And these businesses are always understaffed, and they haven't contributed to community efforts, neighborhood quality of life, or participated in a positive way in the neighborhood. It's also impossible to reach the owners, and there are much healthier and much better food options locally owned and contributing on Delaware Avenue and New Scotland Avenue. So we really do not need another chain. There's already too much excess space, commercial space in our neighborhood now and throughout the city. And unfortunately, as you know, there's just going to be so much more. There really is no need to degrade the environment, lose precious green space to build new. This is a corner that benefits from trees and grass. I know one of your planning board objectives is environmental sustainability. This project is certainly the antithesis of that. Holland Avenue could be a pedestrian-friendly stately boulevard with our prominent institutions connecting these 2 neighborhood business districts. This proposal could be the final blow to making it and turning it into an unattractive, environmentally damaging, car-centric commercial highway. It's not appropriate development for our neighborhood, and I urge the planning board to not support the application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Louise. We have another speaker.
Mr. Rosa, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
All right. First, I'd like to thank the planning board for listening to our comments. I'd have to say that I agree 100% with Louis McNeely and with Councilwoman Fahey on their comments. I agree 100%. As this is a concept meeting, I wanted to discuss my very concerns with this plan, in terms that if you look at it next to the hotel, having this building right on the sidewalk completely changes the sight line and no longer makes it safe. And if we're going to push back on this development, then I definitely would encourage the developer to come back to the community with something that's going to fit within our community and what we would like to see. It seemed pretty clear to me when the speaker was presenting that he said, this is the way Popeyes looks and there will not be any changes to the elevation. So that already indicates to me that we're not going to have a community partner here, but we're going to have an absentee landlord that we are going to once again have to suffer through. We have many vacant buildings and many vacant properties that can be used. I'd also like to bring the attention, if we're going to have this type of building, what about across the street? There is plenty of space to build this structure there. Not that we really want this type of structure, but I understand that it is a commercial building. Again, I think it's very clear that our community is interested, very much interested and proactive in trying to get businesses, local businesses. However, this business is not something that we want. It will not be a good community neighbor. It is not for our community. And I really ask that you really take a hard look at it. Between lots of parking, between an area that's prone to flooding, by being right up on the sidewalk, this is not what we want for our community, is it? And Hackett is not just a side street. Hackett is a very busy street. And this is just something we just do not want. I really appreciate your time. I yield the rest of my time to the next speaker. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you cannot yield time.
Oh.
This is not the state legislature.
Okay, thanks.
But thanks for your comments.
I'm just pulling up the next speaker. Bear with me one sec. Ms. Freeman, are you there?
I certainly am. Can you all hear me loud and clearly?
Yep. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening to all members of the board and all that are here this evening. My name is Simone Freeman. I currently reside at 3 Summit Avenue within the Delaware Avenue community. I am actually a long-term community resident of over 20 years in the same house. And to be frank, that was never my intention. I happened to buy a historic house. The moment I saw it, I fell in love with it. And my intention was just to stay for a few years at best. But 20-something years later, the uniqueness of this community and the people that have brought me here basically have allowed me to commit to staying here. And this is my beloved community for all intents and purposes. And so my comments this evening basically second the previous comments. I will right out the bat say that I am advocating for the board to deny this conditional use permit for what is essentially an accessory build on an existing property site. In the interest of time, I just want to focus in on a couple important points. One is to Mr. Hirschberg. With all due respect, he's the architect. I'm not understanding why the builder and operational folks from Popeyes aren't actually here to discuss the impact of this build. A couple of the things have been spoken of already in terms of the impact, and I second that. The community and environmental impact from the noise, from the dump truck, the pollution from additional traffic. One of the things the board may not be aware of that I'm concerned about as a community advocate is that there is a residential facility for women in recovery at 2 Holland Avenue called The Next Step. They occupy nearly 11,000 square feet, and their backyard abuts the parking lot of this proposed site. And if anyone has knowledge of recovery, your environment is critical, and having a dump truck, having a drive-through with with constant noise will definitely present a problem. Lastly, in terms of the traffic, Mr. Hirschberg, I am an optimist, and although you indicated the traffic is only going to be Holland or Hackett Boulevard for entry, because of limitations, I want the board to consider that everyone
Your time is
not
up.
going- Okay.
Next speaker.
Oh, sorry about that. Ms. Morris, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, my name is Sean Morris. I live at 24 Marinello Terrace, which is about a half-mile away from this site. I have a long history of dealing with zoning issues on this street. For 16 years, I represented the neighborhood on the Common Council and have been an active member of the Neighborhood Association for as long as, since the early 90s. And so often when we deal with this street, it seems as though a lot of people just don't really recognize it for what it is. It's not a highway commercial street. It's not a Central Avenue type commercial road. It's an institutional, it's more like a road running through a campus. The lawns are broad by and large. The traffic, apart from employee comings and goings, is relatively mild. And I, like many people in my neighborhood, in the Helderberg neighborhood, in the Park South neighborhood, and other areas that border this, frequently walk. You'll see at any given time of the day, you'll see families riding bicycles, pushing strollers, joggers, walking dogs. This is not the type of neighborhood where a fast food drive-through restaurant is the appropriate development. It simply is not. The board members have a letter from me, I believe, that was written on behalf of the Delaware. It was signed by me on behalf of the Delaware area board of directors, the Neighborhood Association board of directors. And a lot of those points have also been covered by other speakers. So I wanted to take a moment to respond to a couple of issues raised by Mr. Hirschberg. Number one, flipping the view of the facade from Hackett to the north side, the northern view from Delaware Avenue, you're still exposing an extremely ugly, just plain ugly facade to passersby. That doesn't improve our objections. It doesn't, speak to the objections to the appearance of the building. It's ugly, it's inappropriate for that location. The other issue that he raised was that, well, the board raised the issue of whether or not, what happens if the company moves out. The building wastes, and we all know that. We have seen it time and again in places all over the city, including our own neighborhood. If the company is no longer operating there, the building will be just a deteriorating eyesore instead of an eyesore. That's my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morse.
Oh, sorry about that again. Mr. Bell, are you there? Mr. Bell?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, thank you very much to the planning department and the board for this opportunity. I have been involved in various ways for many years and various things around this site. I first bought a house, which I lived in for many years, about half a mile to the east of this site, about 40 years ago. I now live about half a mile to the west of this site for the last almost 20 years. And also I worked at 44 Holland Avenue for a few years. So I've had certainly a close connection with this intersection and this part of the neighborhood for a really long time. I remember distinctly when there was no McDonald's and no drugstore. The McDonald's was fought by a lot of neighbors. We said that it would be a very bad precedent and encourage the suburbanization of the scale and the speed and commercial nature of the neighborhood. We were right when that was about 30, I think, or so years ago, 25, whatever it was. And then more like 1 decade ago for the Walgreens, we were there in front of the planning board again saying this is suburban. It will encourage the suburbanization of the feel of this neighborhood, undermine the institutional graciousness of Holland Avenue. Again, we were right. Now, there is no reason whatsoever to believe that Popeyes would do anything but exacerbate the problems that have already been created by the previous 2 mistakes. Now, I actually ate at a Popeyes in Mount Vernon, New York, about a couple of years ago, and I don't really think that's an appropriate place. I wouldn't want that to be here on Holland Avenue. One point that has been mentioned a few times is the width of Hackett Boulevard. Now, Hackett Boulevard, the crossing for pedestrians going from east to west on Holland Avenue across Hackett Boulevard is very wide and very dangerous feeling, partly because of the valley of the slope of the land. It's the curb to curb should be reduced so that it's safer for pedestrians. This would make it only worse. So I think there's numerous reasons for the board to turn this down. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Ian,
Thank
are
you.
you there?
Yes. Hi, Zach.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Ian Benjamin, 209 J Street. I actually support a restaurant in this neighborhood. However, I do oppose this site plan as envisioned here. I do not believe it reflects the vision of the comprehensive plan for this area and would urge the board to reject this permit. This site is part of a neighborhood characterized by residences, colleges, offices, and one of the largest hospitals in the area. It's accessible by sidewalks, a walking and biking path across Hackett, and multiple CDTA routes. It is a walkable, bikeable area. It is not a car-centric area, and it is inappropriate as such for a drive-through. Approving this plan, moreover, would perpetuate, as has been referenced by other speakers, the spot zoning that was begun with the McDonald's many years ago across Holland. I would urge the city to work with the applicant to consider other locations for this restaurant, ones that would better fit with the vision of the USDO, with special attention paid to the possibility of retrofitting existing former restaurant buildings, such as the former Friendlies nearby, or leasing space along nearby commercial strips on, say, Delaware or New Scotland. Lastly, if the current parcel owner is interested in developing this particular site in some method, I would urge them to have greater ambition for this corner. It is a very prominent corner, and it would be very appropriate for a multi-story residential or mixed-use structure or an extension of the existing hotel, perhaps even with a Popeyes on the first floor. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers?
Yep, just one more. Miss Lundgren, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
All right. Julie Lundgren at 51 Winthrop Avenue. So I live in the Melrose neighborhood, but I frequent this area, walking, biking, driving through to access Delaware Avenue and New Scotland Avenue and Lincoln Park. I agree with most of my thoughts have been expressed very well by others tonight. Catherine Fay's description of the purpose of the USDO and how this is not consistent with that is a really important point. Also, the points towards that the project, one of the criteria is the project would not result in harmful cumulative effects of impacts, and this certainly would. As noted, the McDonald's was given a variance before, and this request to have a conditional use for the drive-in should not be allowed. And I think this project is not a viable project consistent with USDO at this site. And again, agree that, maybe somewhere else is an appropriate place for a Popeyes. But the damages to the surrounding neighborhoods and the continued shift of a neighborhood feel to a commercial strip is unacceptable. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Lundquist.
And there are no other speakers for this application.
Okay. Mr. Hirschberg, do you have any further comments? You have 6 minutes to make any corrections or?
Yep, I won't take the 6 minutes, Mr. Chairman. However, I would point out that the MU-CU zone permits this use as a conditional use with a drive-through. The setback from the street is in accordance with USDO. Ideally, we might have the building further back from both Hackett and Holland, but the code says to locate it at the street lines or within 10 feet of the front line, so we located it there. The question about the women's residence at the corner of Holland and Delaware, I did a design for that. That's separated from the site by almost 300 feet with the hotel from the site. So they're not really a neighbor to this. They're a neighbor to 22 Holland Avenue, but in between is the hotel site and the parking lot. The number of parking spots, it was made up according to the code, although Zach pointed out I miscalculated by one. Maybe I rounded the wrong direction, but essentially our goal there was to comply with the code. If less parking is needed or less parking is desired, we can work with the applicant to reduce the number of parking. Regarding the views of the building, I was saying essentially the feature Popeye name is a recognition symbol. So that would be in existence here. So to that level, I think Popeyes has the right to identify themselves with their logo. The applicant did have somebody here. Somebody said they should be represented. Ed Box is representing the franchisee, so he's fully familiar with the operation. If you had operational questions, I would have called on Ed to answer them. We think the project meets the code. I understand the neighborhood's reaction. We heard it at the Delaware Avenue Neighborhood Association meeting. However, I would point out the fact is that we believe the code can be met with this site, with this project, and we would ask for the board to consider approving it. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thanks to all who spoke. As I said, we'll probably be seeing this project on at least another 2 meetings. Okay, the next project on the agenda is also for concept review, so there's no decisions to be made. And this is CUP 0039 and DIST 0005 and DPR 0116, all related to the district plan and development plan, major development plan review. And it's a 1385 Washington Avenue. The applicant is Jackie He from DMG Investments, and the agent representing the proposal tonight is again Daniel Hirschberg. In the zoning district is mixed use community urban, and the purpose is concept review for a major development plan for the construction of a 5-story dormitory with 184 units and a parking garage. This is the first time we have this on an official planning board meeting, although we have seen this in a couple of workshops. Mr. Hirschberg, welcome back.
Thank you. My name is still Dan Hirschberg from Hirschberg and Hirschberg. I haven't changed it. I will ask that Darrell Philippi be recognized at a point in this when we get to the more architectural plan, since he's the project architect. Okay, let's start. This is an aerial view of the site, and the building that appears to be under under construction in the left-hand portion is Auden, the housing next door to the Hilton Garden Inn. And that was under construction at the time this aerial picture was taken. It's now completed and occupied. And DMG Investments wants to build another building to the rear of that, in that green area that Zach is circling. Next. This is an aerial photo with an overlay of the site. In light green in there is the outline of the building. In purple is the outline of the property site we want to set up. This is a 2.16 acre portion of the site, is the back portion of it. And the dormitory use is a conditional use. That's why we need not only the major site plan review, but a conditional use review. And we're proposing a district plans because they're both owned by the same person, and we meet the qualifications for a district plan. So this is being reviewed under both district plan, conditional use, and major site development. Next. This is the existing site. You'll notice in there, in addition to those circles which represent soil tests, there are shaded area, which is wetlands. That's a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers federal wetland, and the total wetland within our site is 0.45 acres. The applicant has pursued and already has an application into U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for a permit to fill that 4,500 of an acre worth of wetland to build the building. Some mitigations required, and are participating in the National Wetland Creation Program that will allow that to be done. Next. And this is the site plan on that area. What it shows is a driveway off the parking lot behind 1385 the Auden. Comes straight down and into the site, and straight ahead on that is an underground parking lot, parking underneath the building. And there's also an entrance to that at the very, at the side towards I-90. I'll point out later that we may have to make some change to this based upon some comments received at the district meeting. We held a district meeting as required, and I'll review some of the comments that were made then. The driveway was set up to meet the needs of the fire department to have an area where a fire truck can pull up parallel the building, and a hydrant is placed in that area there. It has actually has two legs that are parallel to the building, both from which a fire could be fought. Next. This is the usage table. The site is 41.8% pervious or green space at the end, and is all 4,500 of a 0.50 acre wetland is going to be disturbed. Next. We're proposing to relocate a sewer. So our utility plan calls for the sewer easement goes right through where the building goes. We propose to relocate it. And we'll work with the Department of Water Supply to satisfy any concerns they might have. A sewer inspection was made of that sewer. The existing condition was that they could only inspect about 100 feet of it before they ran into a blockage that wouldn't even allow the camera to get through. So the existing sewer is in bad condition and deserves to be renewed anyway. Our opportunity to replace it with a brand new sewer would benefit the flow through that sewer. That sewer serves an area west of the site. It goes all the way up to 1475. It also takes a portion of drainage from SUNY campus, but not very much of it. Most of it runs down through a new pump station, which pumps the sewage all the way over to the same Platoon Creek sewer that this area goes to. Next. This is a floor layout. I'm going to let, this is the parking level layout. If you can activate Daryl and let him become a presenter, Daryl Philippi will take you through this.
Daryl, you should be able to unmute. Yeah.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Daryl Filippi. I'm a principal with Bergmeyer in Boston. And just quickly to give you an idea of the plan, the building is positioned on the site, obviously one to protect that new sewer that Dan has mentioned, but also to maximize as much green space as possible. So the building is kind of positioned to the north and to the east of the property lines. Off to the left, where Dan was talking about, there's an entrance to the below grade parking. We have about 92 spaces below grade. That's mostly below grade. We're trying to use the topography. The topography drops into a lower courtyard. So part of the parking level will be exposed on the courtyard side. But again, to get 92 spaces and some storage and core, some facility cores of the lobbies on this level. Next plan, please. This is the main living level. To the left is the entry plaza. We try to get the entry as close to the west part of the building to encourage the circulation as much through the building and then over to the parking lot around Auden 1 over to the campus. What you're seeing in coloration on the plan, browns representing studio units, greens are 1 bedrooms, blues are 2 bedrooms, purples are 3 bedrooms, and yellows are 4 bedrooms. So there's a diverse mix of unit types on the project. And it's pretty similar on each floor. We have some limited amenity spaces with a fitness center and some social spaces scattered about the overall project. Next slide. So this is a typical floor. Again, you basically the division of the units. We don't need to be in specific to that. Next plan. This is the elevation. The main elevation is basically standing in the courtyard. The top one is looking north of the long wing, and the second is the west elevation of the shorter wing. Our concept here is to build this as a modular construction. One is to expedite the construction process on site. So we're trying to, although it's modular, we're trying to create an aesthetic that is not as boring, and but it's a dynamic elevation. And materials. The materials are basically masonry on the lower 2 levels. You can see the lowest level in the courtyard where the parking is, and then the first residential level will be brick, and then the 4 levels above will be different colors of a metal panel. And then you can see some glass where the main lobbies and amenity spaces are. Next view. Just an aerial view to give you an idea of the scale, the entrance of the plaza. And the view of the lower courtyard. And again, the courtyard, we're trying to maximize as much green space, but realizing we do need fire truck access around that. That's why the driving lane circulates inside that courtyard. Next slide, please. This is the view coming around Auden 1 as you approach the building. This will be the main entrance of the plaza into the building. So most students will come and go through this main entrance. But you do see in the far distance, next to the yellow tower, there's a secondary entrance to that building as well. So there's 2 elevators in the building and stairs to circulate through the building in various areas. Next slide, please. This is actually a view step backwards coming right around Auden 1. So as you approach, just coming in the corner from the hotel and the back of Auden 1, this is the view you get as you approach the building. Next slide. This is a view going westbound on I-90. You can see the building starting to peek through the trees. So you get a sense of the scale of the size of the building against the I-90, but you also get a size of the scale of the building of the hotel in the distance. Next slide. Again, another view looking eastbound. This time you see a bit of Auden 1 into the foreground, and then you can see the building peeking out above the vegetation to the left. Next slide, please.
Let me take over now, if you don't mind, Daryl. I mentioned a district meeting was held. We had a Zoom call on February 8th. All adjoiners with 250 feet were invited. This included University at Albany and another number of other property owners. The comments listed below were made by attendees from Hilton Garden Inn, the only adjoining property owner who attended. They have concern about traffic through the easement. Additional traffic generated by the students will utilize the existing easement between Auden and Hilton Garden 1. A traffic study will be provided to quantify the traffic volumes. Pedestrian traffic was shown routed through the driveway area. The applicant is reviewing that. We try to relocate the pedestrian traffic from the driving lane to the easements. That'd be a good idea for everybody, so we're looking to try to do that. They also raised an issue which everybody has raised with regard to the student housing on this side of Washington Avenue, was the increased pedestrian traffic crossing Washington Avenue. They claimed it would be dangerous, and the applicant proposes to work with the city and other shareholders to implement the pedestrian traffic safety plan. People are aware of the Washington Avenue corridor study, which was made. It made some recommendations, some things like a road diet, putting in bike lanes, doing a raised central median so that people have a respite area trying to cross, and it had a number of different recommendations for signalization. This applicant, as well as another project we're representing, 1415 Washington Avenue, have been working with Bill Trudeau to get a solution that would satisfy him, and essentially the applicant has proposed to contribute to a solution or do some independent solution to satisfy that need. Inadequate parking provided. The parking is provided as required under the USDO, and a fee will be charged to reduce the demand by students to having their own cars. Also, applicant will revise the plan to retain all existing parking spaces committed to the Hilton Garden Inn by easement between the adjoining parties. What that means is 17 parking spots behind the Auden are actually for the benefit of Hilton Garden Inn, because when Hilton Garden Inn owned, the owner of Hilton Garden Inn sold this parcel to make Auden 1, they preserved enough parking spaces to satisfy their need. So we had thought we would put the driveway through a portion of those parking spots and ask to relocate those parking spots. Based upon what we've heard from the residents from the Hilton Garden Inn, we intend to relocate that access so that we can not impact any of the parking spaces that are certainly committed to Hilton Garden Inn. Question was parking by contractors, and contractors will be required to provide off-site parking to employees who will be transported to the site. And that's quite usual on a number of sites, including a lot of sites in downtown Albany. There's just no on-site parking for them. Construction traffic, and construction traffic will be limited to the maximum extent possible, obviously, but the use of modular construction will limit the duration of the construction period. The deal is that if we had to build it from scratch with concrete and steel and other materials brought in and outfit all the units, it would take much longer to build. So the applicant will be required to repair and maintain any damage to the pavement. Obviously, cognizant of the time for construction will comply with all requirements. I'm prepared to answer any questions which the board may have.
Questions by the board?
Yeah, Dan, regarding the federal wetlands, can you explain, I guess initially, the reason why they were designated as federal? Usually it's because of either critters there or some kind of plant life.
No.
And then go into some detail about the mitigation, how that works. And
Yeah.
I'm also curious if there's any state designated wetlands there as well.
The first question is, there's no state designated wetlands. In order to be part of the New York State freshwater wetland, you have to be a minimum of 12.8 acres worth of property, and this is significantly less than that. There's significantly less wetlands there. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wetlands, known as Waters of the United States, that's how they're designated, have their own requirements, and most projects that take place try to stay under 0.5 acres. You're eligible for what's called a nationwide permit. If you exceed 0.5 acres, you're an individual permit, which requires much more review. This wetland was created when I-90 was constructed. This area the Patoon Creek, which now runs down the opposite side of I-90 from the site, used to come over to this side, circumnavigate the site, and go back to the other side. So when they built I-90, they cut off that section of Patoon Creek. Consequently, it impounded water, and the three elements to make a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer wetlands are water. Water does not have to be on the surface. Water has to be within 18 inches of the surface for a significant portion of the year. So quite often, I used to do stormwater and wetland seminars, and I say wetlands are not always wet. Quite often, wetlands don't have any standing water on them. They're primarily wet areas below grade, high groundwater table. The second issue is soil. Soil has to be what's called hydric soil. Hydric soil is a soil that builds up over a number of years through the degradation of vegetation. And it's a specific type of soil, and hydric soil has to be in place to be a wetland. And the third one is vegetation. There's certain vegetation which is called wetland vegetation. There's what's called upland vegetation, and there's things that are neutral, can be either upland or wetland. All three parameters have to be present to be a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer wetland. If it had the vegetation and the water table but didn't have hydric soil, it wouldn't be a wetland, and concurrent with everything else. The program that this is applying for is a program that, rather than having people, you might normally say you're damaging a half an acre with a wetland based upon the quality of it. Let's say they say you have to replace it with an acre worth of wetland. People would go around and buy property from people or locate property elsewhere and create a wetland, primarily within the same geographic area. It didn't have to be, but the Army Corps preferred it within the same geographic area, and actually within the same tributary area. They would like something tributary to the Platoon Creek if we were creating a new wetland. Meanwhile, it's come to the attention of a lot of people at U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and nationally that it might be better to aggregate these things and do wetlands at places where they're badly needed to solve drainage problems and other issues with regard to recreating wetlands in other areas. So what this does, it is a financial contribution made by the applicant, which is determined by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers after they review it, based upon the wetlands to be filled and the value of the wetlands, whether or not they're considered low quality drainage wetlands or high quality, which is normally reserved for virgin wetlands, which were not created by drainage situations. And they would pick a ratio, whether or not you replace a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1. And that's the value that's used to figure out the amount of financial contributions that's made to the wetland program.
That was a mouthful. And then,
well, you asked a question, you got an answer.
But just specifically, I mean, I'm thinking way back when my exposure. I know that the Army Corps of Engineers will come through and they'll identify for the federal wetlands. They'd also, if they identify certain species of plant life or like I say, critters that are residing in there, that would have an impact too. Was that the case here or no?
No, the three parameter used by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can include wildlife, although wildlife quite often follows it. Wildlife is concerned because if you go for a permit, the Fish and Wildlife Service has a chance to review your application. And if they find that you're endangering any endangered or threatened species with your work, they can ask you to do something else to mitigate it. We didn't find any endangered or threatened species on the site. We did a wetland delineation done by a biologist who could identify that. However, there was vegetation that qualifies for a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wetland.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I have a question about noise.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard up against I-90. The designer had mentioned how it, quote unquote, peeks through the trees, but those trees are deciduous, and they're going to hardly be peeking through during this time of year when there's no leaves. You know, how is the sound going to be mitigated for the people who are going to be living on the I-90 side of this building?
Yeah, I'll let Daryl answer that from the building stand, but I'll say essentially, foliage by itself doesn't do an awful lot with sound because, as you say, the only thing that really stops the sound is the trunk of the tree, really. So unless you have a very dense stand of trees, and primarily coniferous trees are better than deciduous trees, the sound isn't very well attenuated by foliage at all. So Daryl will have to take care of it with some structural methods. So I'll turn it over to Daryl.
Thanks, Dan. I would say that, typically we're doing, insulated glazing on all the windows. So you do get some acoustical benefit over that. I mean, you can step it up to go triple glazing, but, obviously there's a cost parameter to work with that. But one of the benefits of modular construction is that you do tend to get, higher values of insulation. We have a 6-inch stud wall on the outside, so that'll be fully insulated. Plus, we have another 2 inches outside of the envelope, which gives us, a total of 8 inches of insulation. It's mostly thermal, but it also, acts as an acoustical quality to it too. So there is some, mitigation that will come with the modular construction, which will be a benefit. But it's not out of the normal conditions that we would be constructing anyway. So I think it's an expectation that will be managed.
Thank you.
Does the
board have
questions? Sorry, go ahead, Al.
I asked if the board had any other questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one more. Could you talk a little bit more about pedestrian access between the building and the student campus? I'm very concerned about pedestrian safety in Washington Avenue.
First, the pedestrian access across Washington Avenue. The planning staff has been working with Bill Trudeau, and I think they spoke to University of Albany. We asked them to convene a meeting where the representative from this project and 1415 Washington Avenue, and maybe even a couple of the other facilities that are there now with Auden itself, which is also DMG Group, or 1475 Washington Avenue could all be together because they would all benefit by an improved pedestrian access. There are a number of things that were proposed. It was primarily for 1385 and 1415. One of the original proposals was to do beacons, crosswalk beacons that are hit where somebody hits a button and the beacons flash and people cross and the beacons stop traffic. The second, after we submitted that to Bill Trudeau, he says that wasn't suitable. So we went back in and we had the beacons with mast arms hanging them over the pavement, because normally the beacons are on the side of the road. And with the width of the road, somebody might not see it, not observe it. So we proposed to do beacons with, just like their traffic lights, hanging right over the road so that they're right over the driving lane, so nobody could say they missed the flashing beacon. And we're not so sure whether or not that meets the test, but he thought essentially you might want to add another traffic signal. So all those things are being considered. We're not so sure. By the way, that pedestrian corridors, or the Washington Avenue corridor study, considered a lot more than just pedestrian crossing. It considered bicycling and narrowing the road to take advantage of the new 30-mile speed limit, because right now, even though the 30-mile speed limit is there, unless you're aware of the presence of a traffic cop there, people go a lot faster. I set mine at 30 because I'm concerned that somebody's going to be picking me up coming down between Fuller Road and Brevard Street. But again, that's a situation that exists there, and there are a whole bunch of. If you implemented all of the proposals that were in that pedestrian corridor study, there was a bottom line number of $8 million, of which about $6 million would qualify for federal grants and another $1 million for state grants. Whether or not they get them, nobody's made an application for them yet. Nobody knows what's going there. So we're sort of in front of that. So our proposal would be to make a financial contribution to either be held as part of a larger project or to be instituted now. We prefer it be instituted now so it benefits our students. And The level we talked about previously, and nothing's been written in stone yet, was $250,000 contribution, which would be more than it would cost to build those beacons with mastheads over the road. That estimate was like $220,000. We made it $250,000 since there might be some other improvements they want to do to it. But in any event, we think essentially our goal is to work with Bill Trudeau and anybody else involved with that committee to see whether or not we can come to a good solution. It is a problem. It was a problem when 1475 was built. We had thought we wanted to put a divider in the center of the road, but DGS didn't want it, and they were also concerned with how to get traffic into the Sunoco station next door. So we couldn't put a divider very far down Washington Avenue. But again, some of the things they're talking about is a curved island in the middle where they could control traffic better, only have turnout lanes where turnouts are needed, so that, and then they would narrow down the driving lane to theoretically one lane and have a fully protected bicycle lane alongside that, something like we have down on Lower Madison Avenue.
Okay, so the improvements are pretty substantial. I'll have to look up that report.
Yeah.
I do drive through there every day when I'm not working from home, and I definitely see a lot of issues today, or last year.
The idea of the beacons, I think, will be helpful, but
I agree.
Does it? It doesn't change human nature. The only way things are going to change is when somebody gets clipped. I've driven that road a lot of times, and people cross where they want to cross, where it's most convenient. And one of these days, somebody will get clipped, and that'll be a lesson. But it's going to happen.
But I think we should do our best to avoid it. And to some extent, convenience is a matter of how the buildings on the north side are designed. If the entrances are near the crosswalks, that makes it that much easier to
Well, the proposal was, Martin, to have a beacon crosswalk right where the sidewalk coming out of this building came along Auden 1 and hit Washington Avenue. That was where they wanted one, and another one down by 1415. We wanted one dedicated crosswalk to those people. We know for a fact nobody's going to walk laterally along Washington Avenue.
Yeah, right.
The traffic light at Dunkin' Donuts is a good issue there because, again, that was put in to provide safe crossing at a convenient place to get to SUNY or University of Albany, I'm sorry. And that's not used by many people. They cross where they want to cross. And the Sunoco station, even before the housing was built, the same problem with the Sunoco station.
Yeah, people supposed to cross where they want to cross because where they want to go at the state university is their projection. But I think one of the other things that could slow traffic down is what is happening already, which is the lights are not timed. If you go too fast, you're forced to stop at a traffic light. They're timed to basically keep you going slowly. So I think that helps too.
Well, Bill Trudeau's thought was by adding another traffic light and having that out of sync too, it'll slow traffic more. So one question is, do we go with beacons or a traffic signal, or is there some other solution that might work to help us? And my client's open to any solution that Bill Trudeau and his committee would come up with.
Okay.
Further questions by the board? Okay, hearing none. Zach, are there any speakers?
Yep, we have 4 people signed up to speak, so give me just 1 sec as I transition over to the timer. Mike, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to let the board know that Mike had reached out earlier and just had comments on the application and just requested that the site plan be available when he provided comments, just so he could refer to it. So I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint presentation real fast. And I will have the timer going, and I will audibly say when 30 seconds are left.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. My name is Mike Dayode. Good evening, everyone. I'm at 8100 East 22nd Street in Wichita, Kansas. I'm president of LodgeWorks. We developed, own, and operate the Hilton Garden Inn and have been in business for about 14 years. It's adjacent to the subject property. Before making some prepared comments, I would implore this board to please do a site walk to understand the severity of the access issues, which were not well highlighted in this presentation. That would be very telling for the board and important in this situation. I'll move to my prepared comments. This proposed development is dangerous and should not be permitted. The impacts are extensive and will create extensive life safety concerns and risks for our employees, our guests, and our vendor partners. Secondly, they'll create life safety concerns and risks for the students in the existing student housing at the Arden and the employees and students who would be part of the proposed development, and will almost entirely restrict our ability to operate our hotel in a peaceful manner. It would be impossible. It would be irresponsible of this board to approve this project. I personally cannot accept responsibility or liability of the dangerous conditions that will result if approved, and the first person to be injured or killed because of this project moving forward, such responsibility will lie directly with the developer, this board, and the city of Albany. Allow me to provide some history and details around our grave concerns. Where appropriate, I will refer to the visible site plan. To provide some background, as Mr. Hirschberg indicated, this used to be the Red Carpet Inn, and the easements that are in place today oversee access, both vehicular and pedestrian, were developed with only the Hilton Garden Inn operation and the existing student housing, the Arden, operations in mind, not this proposed development. From a site development perspective, the remaining undeveloped portions of the site was never contemplated for development because the parcel doesn't support development. The grades don't allow for alternative access, and the existing protected wetlands would be disturbed with associated geotechnical risks of slides that would be real. The Arden construction had a material negative impact on our operation of the hotel. However, such impact was limited because the construction access to the Arden was close to Washington Avenue. This would not be the case for the new development. All construction traffic and ongoing operational traffic and pedestrian traffic would need to pass through the existing parking servicing the hotel, located on both sides of the traffic way. Maybe Zach, you could point that out. Let's talk about specific items related to this proposed development. Traffic. The existing traffic is already at functional capacity at the interchange with Washington Avenue, resulting in life safety concerns. If we contemplate the proposed additional construction traffic through the existing parking, I want you to imagine a guest walking to their car from the hotel with all the traffic associated with this construction. That's what will happen. Next, let's talk about ongoing traffic from the added use. Post-opening, the traffic risks would not improve.
Okay, and that's time. And Mike had a colleague sign up to speak as well, so I'm going to transition to that colleague real fast. Greg, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep. Feel free to start whenever you're ready, and I will also give a 30-second mark.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Greg Epp. I'm the of 8100 East 22nd Street, Wichita, Kansas. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of LodgeWorks, once again, the developer, owner, and operator of the Hilton Garden Inn, 1389 Washington Avenue. Let me continue with Mike's prepared statement. Post-opening, the traffic would not improve. Imagine this distracted student on their phone driving through the middle of our parking lot with the Arden on one side, the hotel on the other, looking at their phone, trying to navigate their car around the end of the Arden and into the proposed development. The dangers are immense. Then think of the pedestrian traffic that we talked about on Washington Avenue, but all those students walking through this same parking lot with our spaces on both sides of the parking lot and the Arden on one side, the hotel on the other. There'll be 300 additional people, one for each proposed bed, added to the mix. And then on top of that, we're talking about the insufficient or no sidewalks, no crosswalks along this way. They'd have to go down the parking lot. With regard to parking, 100 spaces for 319 beds. We believe that's not adequate for the amount of cars, considering that we have our spots along the driveway into the proposed development. And then add to that, where will the visitors park when they come to visit the students? There'll be cars, an additional amount of cars. And then during the construction, I know that it will be possible to bus everybody in or provide spots for construction workers on site. We know they're going to bring their tools and their trucks in. Those will go through the site. And so we have a concern about monitoring this parking to give to our guests. So that's also a concern. As far as construction, we want to talk about the construction traffic and all the going through the pinch points back to the back. You'll notice on the site plan, everything will have to go through our parking lot, and we discussed that. Will the modular units fit through this access way?
30 seconds.
So imagine navigating that traffic. We also have environmental concerns. We talked about a little earlier the benefits of the vegetative barrier that will be removed, and sound will be more evident for our guests. And then the geotechnical concerns, considering the steep grades down into the wetlands. We're concerned about that. And finally, of course, the emergency response with the fire department and their proposed study. How will they actually get back through there and fight a fire in that area, having to go through?
Okay, and that's time. I'm going to switch back to the timer for the following two speakers, so they will be able to see that when they provide public comment. All right, Ms. Lundgren, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay. My name is Julie Lundgren. I spoke earlier. I'm at 51 Winthrop Avenue in Albany. And I am opposed to the proposed expansion of this dormitory, the Auden 2, at this site. The facility would add significantly to the impervious surface in the area and exacerbate water runoff issues and add to the sewer load of this already overloaded system. The proposed plan would convert from the 2.16 acre parcel, almost 60% of that would be converted from woodland to impervious surface. That is 1.26 acres would be converted to impervious surface. In addition, based on the applicant's proposal, their own numbers, it looks like there will be, considering this building and the also another student dorm at further down on Washington Avenue, it will be a 16% increase in the total sewage outflow at the I-90 pump station. We already have enough problems with the sewage outflow. The wetland is, as they say, is a federal wetland. That means it does have wetland plants. I'm an ecologist. I do wetland work, and that wetland serves important and essential functions for absorbing rainwater, absorbing runoff from the existing parking lots and development, It prevents erosion of the slope, and as noted, it is a steep slope on part of it. And it filters water and reduces stormwater flow going into the sewer system and down I-90. These functions of this woodlot were considered in the approval of the building of Auden 1 and would be totally negated by subdividing this lot and developing Auden 2. And for these reasons, as well as the safety issues that have already been brought up with adding more students to this area and the pedestrian problems, I oppose this project. Thank you very much.
We have one more speaker. Bear with me as I get them from the list. Jordan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm Jordan Carlio Evangelist. I work in the Office of Government Community Relations at Albany, and I am a resident of 39 Holmesdale in the beautiful city of Albany. So I just want to appreciate the board for giving us a moment to speak tonight. And I want to start by saying that we sort of welcome any conversation with the developers of this project, with traffic engineering, about safety. That's always our number one issue. We want our students, faculty, staff, people who have nothing to do with the university to be able to safely cross between these facilities and our campus. And I think to the credit of the planning department and to APD, we have a pretty strong relationship and have had a lot of conversations about potential solutions there. So we'd welcome that with this developer as well. The other point I want to make, and I believe the board is in receipt of a letter from my colleague Sheila Siri, is the idea that the parking ratio, we believe, for this facility, and it applies to projects, not just this one, contemplated in the USDO for dormitories is insufficient. We believe that the parking necessary for a facility like this is more appropriately evaluated on a per bed ratio rather than per unit, as is done in the USDO. Sort of understand why the per unit standard would be the case for a typical multifamily building, but dormitories are something that we have a good amount of experience in operating. And the nature of dormitories are such that most of the people who live together in a unit are unrelated. They're very unlikely to share a vehicle. And we think that increases the parking demand above what a per unit analysis would indicate is necessary. I mean, I want to be clear that we are on board with the spirit and the letter of the USDO, and that we want to reduce car trips as much as possible. We want to make Washington Avenue as pedestrian friendly. We want everybody taking the bus to our campus, and the university has done a lot to support that. But there are certain realities of students who are from out of town, working off-campus jobs will bring cars. And as proposed right now, the ratio of beds to parking spaces would be over 3 to 1. And we think it's just unrealistic to think that that's sufficient for the college student lifestyle, and the fact that you'll have 2, 3, and in some cases 4 people unrelated living in the same units. So we would just ask the board to consider that. And I guess more broadly, as you think about amendments to the USDO down the line, perhaps revisit whether or not the ratio for dormitories as written now is appropriate. So thank you, and look forward to having some more conversations about safety.
And that was all the people that signed up to speak for this application.
Mr. Hirschberg, you have 6 minutes to correct anything or rebut anything that was mentioned.
I certainly won't take the 6 minutes, Mr. Chairman. I do just like to comment on a couple issues. Number one, Ms. Lundgren talked about the impact of taking the wetlands away from drainage situation. Our stormwater plan is to take all the stormwater generated by all the impervious area on our site and discharge it into a subsurface basin underneath the building, recharge to the groundwater. So it'll recharge to the same groundwater that the wetland recharged to. There'll be no overflow. First of all, the city doesn't maintain any storm sewers, but it won't overflow to the ditch line along I-90 at all. It'll be maintained on site. The issue around pedestrian, we share Jordan's concern about it. I think everybody's concerned about it. Our goal here is to try to minimize the risk to the maximum extent feasible. I welcome the opportunity to talk with my friends at LodgeWorks. We were the engineer for the Hilton Garden Inn. We had a great relationship with them. I hope it's still retained through this project. But our goal here is to satisfy a need that DMG has identified for additional student housing, and keeping it proximate to University of Albany makes it more logical to have people walk or use a shuttle bus to get back and forth to campus and not drive. So in many ways, that's approval of this project would make that possible. I think that pretty much answers the things that I saw out there that I want to comment on. We want to work with the people at Hilton Garden Inn to resolve some of their concerns. We propose to change the plan so they won't impact their site at all. Traffic safety has already taken a look at it. They recommended some locations for parking spots for their ladder truck, and we provided those. So I think some of the issues raised have already been solved. Other issues need more work, and that's normal at the time we come for concept approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think as we go forward with this project, one thing I would be interested in is really how much the student parking is necessary, because although I don't discount what Jordan has said, I also would like to know how much parking is taken up in the Auden and how much parking is taken up in the older development farther west. Every time I go by the older development farther west, whose name I can't remember because it changed, the parking there is never full. So one of the things I'd be interested in is looking at the level of parking. My understanding is that a lot of students don't own cars. So I might be wrong about that, but as we go forward, that's something I certainly think we ought to look into. We do have one action tonight on this project, and that is for the planning board to be lead agency on the State Environmental Quality Review Act. So I would ask, unless there's any other questions or comments, I would ask for a motion to declare the planning board as the lead agency for seeker on this project.
So moved.
Moved by Roman Kuchera.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Gayard. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And aye. It passes unanimously. Are there any other issues to come before the board? Any other business? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
Okay.
Unanimous consent.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you very much, people, and we will see you soon.